Hi, welcome to this week's episode of Wide Open Throttle. I'm your host this week, as both Jesse Lang and Angus McKenzie are out on assignment. So I just got back from the Geneva Auto Show along with my colleague Frank Markus, and tremendous show, a ton of supercars and a lot of really interesting debuts. What do you think, Frank?
Always a pleasure. I love that place because no one has a home court advantage. All of the big players are in their own little world, and this year with the economy in shambles over there, it was like only rich people have money to throw on cars, and it was all supercars from one end to the other.
Indeed. Now we had a lot of the supercars. We had sneak peeks early, and you guys saw a lot of them beforehand. What was most interesting to you? Which one?
I would say, I think the McLaren and the Ferrari were the two, stars for me. Like not being at the show and then seeing photos, getting the info. I mean, just amazing that you have these, almost 1,000 horsepower cars, over $1 million, stupid performance. It just insane. I mean, those two cars, I think.
Yeah. Scott, any?
Ferrari. I mean, we've been waiting and teased for so long about a successor to the Enzo, and this is it, and how they've incorporated a lot of the stuff that they've learned from racing, a KERS type system. Really, really interested to see how that works. Really interested to see if we actually get our hands on one, please. That one for me, and as Ron mentioned, that McLaren. I mean, that car started off amazing. Luckily, they adjusted the name. It's now much easier to say. This one's gotten a little long as well. But again, the technology in some of these cars is just incredible. Really looking forward to playing with those cars.
Yeah, I had a nice long chat with the McLaren P1 program manager, Paul McKenzie, and we talked about everything under the sun, including the LaFerrari, the competitor. And one thing that he mentioned that was really interesting to me is that there are three manufacturers that have all arrived at the same conclusion, which is a petrol-powered engine like a V8 or a V12, an electric hybrid system on it in a mid-engine design, and that's Ferrari, that's McLaren, and the Porsche 918. So for him, it's like 2013 is the most interesting year in the history of all auto manufacturing, because all of these manufacturers are coming out with these super high performance vehicles. It was very interesting to me that he didn't mention Lamborghini at all, even though based on our coverage that Veneno really, I mean, we posted a couple of pictures to our Instagram account, and it was the most popular vehicle anybody had ever seen.
But it's a
Aventador
with a really crazy body kit on it. It's not bringing anything new to the table that the Lamborghini's not already doing.
It certainly does look shocking in the flesh, though.
It is a cartoon. It is the angriest looking car on the floor there, that is for sure.
Yeah, and I really like that it has a dorsal fin, sort of apropos of nothing. It's not like these were raced in Le Mans where you're seeing all these on the Audis, but it does have that massive sort of triangular wedge heading to the back. Very, very striking car. When it rolled out during Group Night, I think people were gasping just at just how angry, how mad it really was. So very clearly, I think there were some major supercar announcements. Were there any duds? Do you guys notice anything you didn't like?
I thought the Pininfarina concept was kind of a dud to me. Couldn't really tell if it was coming or going. That had a thing that looked like a windshield, but it was actually sort of the headrest supports and who knows what. And of course, they made the mistake of sitting it next to a beautiful car, the 1965 concept that led to the Dino, which was just gorgeous. So, yeah, that one didn't look so good.
The only car that I think was really sort of didn't really do it for me was a BMW, the 3 Series,
the GT.
GT. 3 Series GT. And it's not that it's ugly in person. I just conceptually I don't understand what BMW is doing by having sedans and coupes on different platforms and then making a GT, the coupe 4-door on this platform and also having a sedan. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, they have X1, X3, similar kind of concept utility, and then 3 Series sedan, 3 Series wagon. And now they have this. It's like, where's their room? I don't.
On the GT, they introduced with the 5 Series a year or two ago. Not too well received, and it was kind of surprising that they continued. I mean, with the 3 Series, which is arguably their most popular, beloved vehicle, and to do that to that car, that's I was surprised that they took that route with that.
At least this one doesn't have that crazy tailgate with a trunk and all that other nonsense.
It's a better interpretation.
Back there,
and I think another vehicle that was interesting to me was the Porsche 911 GT3. I think we're going to look forward to having that, hopefully at Best Driver's Car. But I talked to some of the PR guys over there, and they're, this is pretty groundbreaking stuff for them, not having a manual in the vehicle anymore. It's going to be...
They don't need one. That PDK is perfection.
Well, I'm sure a lot of the purists are going to address your comments, Scott.
Yeah, none of them have driven the cars that we have, and until they do, keep firing the comments in.
But speaking of old school, did anyone see the Spagna GTA Spano? I loved it. It's a supercar. It has the looks of a, kind of a McLaren MP4 a little bit, but it is powered by a Viper twin turbo V10 midships. I love the old world hybrid. The way they used to do European hybrids, European bodywork with an American engine. And they're just coming out with that car. The press materials even mentioned that they had dealers in the U.S. I'm not going to hold my fingers with my breath, but
What did they want to use a Viper engine for? That just seems kind of like an odd choice.
More cylinders than 8, and there were no American V12s they could grab. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, so another topic right out of Geneva, very controversial, was the name of that Enzo successor, the LaFerrari. What are your guys' thoughts? I mean, we're hearing a lot of manufacturers doing some very interesting naming decisions. Infinity's gone to the Q, QX branding, BMW's putting all sorts of letters and number combinations. Lincoln is now MK, whatever, you fill the letter. Let's start with LaFerrari. What are your thoughts?
I don't like it at all. I don't know what's come over Ferrari. At first they named the FF, which supposedly stood for Ferrari 4, the Ferrari 4. This is the successor for the Ferrari Enzo Ferrari, and now we got the Ferrari LaFerrari. It's like Usher needs to say his name 4 times at the beginning of a music video. What's up with that?
At least it is a name, though. I agree, don't care for LaFerrari, but at least it's a name. It's not a jumble of letters and numbers, and which is really disappointing. I mean, Mercedes with a 63 that has nothing to do with anything that the car ever did, even when they still had that engine. It was never a 6.3, it was a 6.2. So, I mean, at least it's a name, an odd name, but at least it still is a name.
Well, I think it reflects a little bit of like Ferrari hubris there to say, we're going to call this, we think this car is so good, we're going to call it the Ferrari. Doesn't even need a name, this is the one that everyone will just know what we're talking about because it's that great. I mean, that's a little bit of just kind of their attitude.
Well, but I think that's... I actually don't mind it that much. I can imagine it in a nice script, and it does look nice on the back of the vehicle. And but to Frank's point, you mentioned that why don't they just name it after cities in Italy and keep that going, because they sound fantastic to our ears. They could name it damn near anything.
Didn't Enzo have a middle name?
Right. Exactly.
But the bottom line is it doesn't matter. I mean, the car I think is going to be so fantastic and amazing that
who does care?
Yeah.
And even if it's not, it's going to sell out. So
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
they're covered either way.
And it's better than I think what we heard was the operating name, the F-150.
Yeah, that would have been bad.
Hello.
The Ferrari F-150.
I don't think
got
they
two
could have gotten away
F-150s.
with that, yeah.
But then other manufacturers, we talked to Johan Denischen about going from the Audi, going from Audi and then to Infinity, and really kind of taking the same naming convention with him. And all the vehicles now are going to be sedans, start with a Q and then have some number, typically 2-digit, and then the SUVs are going to be QX followed by some 2-digit combination that don't correspond to engine displacement or type of engine or cylinder count.
Yeah.
With all due respect to Mr. Denischen, who I respect a great deal, my main problem with that is Infinity came into this country with Q being the flagship. It's a Q ship. It's that was the idea, and now to put a Q on everything, it's suddenly like, oh, all children are special.
I hear though the one of the reasons is that they want to sharpen the brand focus. They want to give Infinity, give it some attitude, simplify some of what's going on. And also, when you start talking naming with a lot of the brand managers and the designers, almost every name apparently is taken under the sun. Like that's why a lot of the manufacturers like Lincoln, and they're going to these alphanumeric
They're
combinations.
leaving the names.
Yeah,
That's why Acura did too. I mean, they wanted more focus on the brand Acura as opposed to Legend or Integra.
Well, and Jeep just introduced the brand new Grand Cherokee. Well, they've also reintroduced the Cherokee, which I think kind of dilutes that name. I mean, Cherokee always meant something, and now they've replaced, the Liberty, or is it the Patriot, with
Liberty. And Liberty was always Cherokee abroad, and as they do try and go to a global, because the advertising spills over on the internet and so forth. I think that's part of the reason there.
Yeah, we forget that a lot of these cars now with globalization, they have to work in every country. So you don't just have to worry about trademark violations and such in America. You have to worry about Europe and Asia and so on and so forth.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, Nova doesn't go in Spanish.
Yeah.
Who knows what everything means in all the languages around the world that they're going to now?
Although alternatively, we reported recently that Cadillac is thinking about going the other way. Is that they decided this whole whatever TS thing is maybe not quite what they wanted, and there's people saying, maybe we got to bring back Eldorado. That wasn't such a bad name.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind it at all. I mean, those are
do it right.
Fantastic names. So, well, we started off with LaFerrari. Let's transition on to the Ferrari 4. Now, Scott, you just went on a winter driving school with Ferrari. How was that?
It's a really neat program. It's something that Ferrari technically only does for owners, and it's like $12,000 a piece. But they take you to Aspen, Colorado, and out to Steamboat Springs, and they literally put you out on an ice track and send you out there to go driving a $300,000 car in the snow. And it's a really actually great experience. Not just to say that you went and drove a Ferrari in the snow, but there's a lot you can learn from driving a car on ice. I mean, as Frank knows, Frank used to ice race. You can learn a lot of car control on ice, right?
Yeah, and at low speeds that are safe.
It's interesting though, because not just you and the FF. Johnny went on the Porsche winter driving school up in Canada, and Jesse was out doing the Bentley winter driving school as well. Why is it so many luxury manufacturers? Like, what are they trying to do here?
Well, the easy answer, especially for somebody like Ferrari, is to tell people, hey, why don't you come try this one? Especially if you say you live in New York, and you live in New York City, where it costs $1 billion to live in an apartment the size of this table, but and it snows in the winter, but you could still have a Ferrari. You can have an FF, and you can drive that every day the same way that you can drive anything else. And you can buy a Bentley if you live up there. I think it's reaching out to customers who might normally, well, maybe I'll buy it and park it at the summer home, but maybe not.
Yeah, and AMG has one, of course, also. Johnny Lieberman just went up there and tried that one out, and all of their products are super high performance, and most of them are rear drive. They're introducing 4MATIC on them in the coming year. But there, too, I think it's an opportunity for the customer to get an idea of what the car is like at the limit and when the limit is really low. And you can, feel all this great stuff at 40 miles an hour that you would be going 120 at Laguna Seca to do the same thing.
Well, the best part about it is if you do screw up, most of the time the snow is fairly soft. I mean, if there's some really hard packed stuff, you're going to break something. But if you nose it into a little pile of snow, there, you're probably not going to hurt anything.
Right. Well, I think it's interesting. I mean, I've never done one, but I did go to Germany to test. It was a long time ago, on one of their zero mu test courses, which was basically plastic that was then sprayed with water. And they told me at the time, like, we have this surface that you don't actually need to go to Sweden or wherever to go practice car control in zero traction conditions. I guess it's a little hard to get potential clients and customers out to that test track, but
Well, the other thing you don't get is that the tire compound isn't behaving like it would at 20 degrees or 20 below or whatever. There's no simulating that, so that it's great for some things. It's great for developing traction control systems and so forth. The electronics can do their thing, but you don't get quite the same experience as when you actually suffer in cold weather.
Well, so I guess my question is why these guys are even doing vehicles that have all-wheel drive systems, particularly high performance manufacturers like Ferrari, like Porsche.
Well, I think it's totally different. Jaguar just added four-wheel drive on a lot of their cars because they have a lot of trouble selling cars in the northern tier without it, and they see that Mercedes-Benz and Audi and everybody else is cleaning their clock with sales up there. With Ferrari, I think they wanted to get people interested into the idea that really we're seeing cars that are sub 3 seconds 0 to 60, and that is traction limited with two wheels. So you're going to really want four wheels pulling. And they came up with such an interesting technical solution for four-wheel drive that I think they just wanted to, get people thinking about all-wheel drive for those reasons.
Yeah, and as I say, I think it's the same thing with AMG. They've kind of realized that with some of their bigger engines, you're putting, almost 300 horsepower to each rear wheel. I mean, at some point, you're limited in what physics are going to allow you to do. So with the, the new E63, it's all-wheel drive, and it's a permanent split, 33% front, 67% rear. So you still get some of that rear bias, but you get that extra traction from the front, especially trying to launch the car and even coming out of a corner.
And with that car, AMG is saying, right, that all future AMG models will have an all-wheel drive
for the
component.
US. I think too, for a lot of customers, I think it's a kind of a safety thing too. You have so much power. When people are accelerating, rear drive can get a little dicey. A four-wheel drive, it helps. It's just, I think, a little safer. And
companies like Porsche, I mean, they still are one of the few companies I know of that have permanent rack mounts on their roofs that are for ski racks. Why? Because the German cars go up to the Alps and go, playing in the snow. It was just almost natural for them to get into an all-wheel drive car. Again, four wheels turning, gives you better traction and control in snow and ice and whatnot. And I mean, it seemed natural for Porsche because, again, one of the few cars I know of that you can still go there and flip up the little tab and put your ski rack on there and off to the slopes.
Even the convertibles.
Even the convertibles.
I think too, in the Sun Belt, you can still sell all-wheel drive vehicles.
Yeah.
And then now you have the Snow Belt where, hey, we have four-wheel drive. I mean, you can buy our car too. It's not just, Subarus.
And we can sit there all day long and try and tell them that winter tires will get you just
Doesn't matter.
90% of the thing. Oh, where do I put those in the summer? I don't want to fool with it,
Right. Well, I do think that all these manufacturers are moving towards all-wheel drive systems, particularly on the enthusiast vehicles, really speaks to a larger issue. But we'll have to talk about that next week. For now, I think great conversation, guys. Cheers.
Cheers.